One of our flagship products, Gluten Shield, was designed to support people on their gluten-free journey. It's especially beneficial for those just learning about their gluten sensitivity. There's an average 12-week learning curve in that. It was designed to protect from accidental gluten exposure and cross-contamination, as well as to support and protect you during travel or eating out. It was not designed to help you eat more gluten. That's a key. Now, Gluten Shield key ingredients include proteolytic enzymes and something called DPP4. Now, this enzyme's been shown to break down the proline and glutamine bonds in gluten proteins. It also contains a proteolytic enzyme blend designed to help you break down proteins. Remember, years of gluten-induced intestinal and stomach damage can sometimes inhibit that process. It contains carbohydrate-busting enzymes that support the digestion of the starchy components of grains. And it contains a very specialized probiotic called Bifidobacterium infantis. Bifidobacterium infantis is a specialized probiotic strain that has been shown in research studies to aid in the breakdown of difficult-to-digest carbohydrate elements found in grains. It's also been shown with celiacs to reduce intestinal symptoms. It also helps support overall digestion. Now, Gluten Shield also contains an herbal blend for additional digestive support. It contains fennel, which aids in digestion and supports relaxation in the smooth muscle lining the GI tract. It contains ginger, traditionally used for nausea and upset stomach. It's also believed to promote digestion by increasing the flow of saliva, gastric juices, and bile. It also contains peppermint, used to support digestion and to provide relief from GI discomfort. Now, recommended use for Gluten Shield, if you're taking it for daily maintenance, just take 1 capsule with each meal or snack for supporting digestion and daily gluten protection. For enhanced performance, take 2 capsules with each meal or snack for travel or eating out. Now, if you want it for aggressive use, take 3 capsules with each meal or snack. This is best for gluten-free newbies, those who are new to the gluten-free diet and not quite sure whether they're avoiding all of the gluten in their environment. Hey everybody, welcome to Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain. I'm here for you every Thursday at 12:30 for live Q&A. We help you resolve autoimmune problems with diet, lifestyle, and education. Welcome to the show. If you missed Tuesday, we talked a lot about mold detoxification. It's been a topic in demand. A lot of people wanted to know about that. So if you missed that show, you can go back and watch it on our YouTube channel at Dr. Osborne. You can also ask your questions for today's show in the feed. So if you've got questions you'd like me to answer, we'll dive into those. Now, before I get into the Q&A, we've had so many questions coming in after Tuesday's show on what do you do for mold in terms of what do you take? Like, how do you know if you're mold colonized versus how do you know if you have mold toxicity versus how do you know if you have mold allergy? And so I want to dive in just a little bit to that quickly, and then we'll get into your question. So if you pay attention to the board here, you know, we've got this broken down: mold allergy, mold colonization, and mold toxins. So fundamentally, how do you know if you're mold allergic? Simple: IgE testing. Ask your doctor to run IgE testing. As I mentioned before, about 22% of the population is going to be allergic to at least one mold. How do you deal with mold allergy? Very simply, if you're trying to support your body's histamine responses with nutrition, the way you deal with it is vitamin C and quercetin. And you can do, 5 grams a day here, up to, some people don't need that much, but up to 5 grams a day is pretty safe. Quercetin up to 4 grams per day is very safe to take. Generally no major concerns or interactions outside of your own unique responses to these things. So vitamin C and quercetin, both options. If you're looking for gluten-free sources of these nutrients, you can come check us out at Gluten Free Society. We have a product called Detox, and we have a product called Ultra Q. which will get you those strong doses in that regard. We also have something called Histacyst, which combines vitamin C, quercetin, bromelain, nettle, all together. Again, the goal here is to control histamine output. Now, if you're trying to break histamine down, there's one other thing that you can do, and that's to take something called DAO. Diamine oxidase is the enzyme that degrades histamine, and this is natural. Your body produces it, although some people with years of gluten exposure have damaged their ability to make adequate quantities of DAO, and so supplemental DAO may be very helpful for those individuals. So these are things you can do. These are things you can take if you're just trying to deal with the chronic mold allergy-related symptoms, watery, teary, itchy eyes, to be some common symptoms: wheezing, shortness of breath, mucus production in the throat, hives on the skin. These are all manifestations of the IgE allergy response. Now, let's move on to mold colonization. If we're trying to identify whether or not there's mold or yeast colonizing your body, there are tests that can be done depending on the type of doctor that you're seeing. If you suspect this is not a DIY project. This is a go to the doctor, ask for some testing type of scenario. So the sinuses are a common place for colonization to occur. This can be identified via a culture. You can have a doctor culture your sinuses. Same thing with the lungs. Lungs is another common location. You can do sputum cultures, or you can also you can also go see a pulmonologist, and they can run some more advanced testing on you as well. If we're talking about colonization of the skin, you can see a dermatologist. Sometimes they'll actually take samples from the skin and look at it, but they can also culture nail beds and culture skin to determine whether or not you've got yeast or mold growing on the skin. And then the other common place is the GI tract, and definitely a culture. Culture and also microscopy. So these are tests that you can ask your doctor for that will help you to determine or differentiate whether or not you're mold colonized. Once you know that you are, usually, if it's on the skin, there will be antifungal creams that your doctor might prescribe you. If it's in your GI tract, a lot of times they'll prescribe what are called azoles, azole antifungals. So that if the drug ends in azole, that's typically an antifungal medication. And same thing with the lungs. A lot of times they'll use azole antifungal. Same thing with the sinuses. Now, if you're looking for more natural support in this realm, if it's in your GI tract, there's some great things that you can use. Oregano, although in my experience, when we culture people, oregano oftentimes comes back, yeast and overgrowth or colonization also often comes back resistant to oregano. I think it's because so many people are using it, and it's creating a potential antifungal resistance. So oregano, but nonetheless, it is an antifungal. Also garlic extract. Caprylic acid is my favorite to use. What caprylic acid does is it embeds in the cell membrane of yeast cell walls, disrupting their cell membrane, disrupting their nutrition. And so that can be very effective. And these are all, again, natural things that you can do, very, very safe. Ideally, you want to work with a functional doctor, somebody who understands the proper dosing with these things. But these are all things that you can do. Of course, this is a short list. This is by no means a definitive list. The other thing you want to make sure you're doing is using a good solid probiotic, because one of the ways to get rid of yeast colonization is to create competition for it. Probiotics are the natural competitors to yeast. There's one in particular called S. boulardii, which is a very good competitor of yeast. We actually have a product called Biotic Defense with S. boulardii that we use very commonly. We have a caprylic acid at the store at Gluten Free Society. We also have a supplement blend called Yeast Shield, and it has a number of different antifungal herbals in it, to include thyme and olive leaf extract. So if this is your situation and you're just trying to support yourself naturally, these are things that can be done. Now, when it comes to the mold toxins, very simply put, mold toxins have to be removed from the body. So we talked in depth about how that happens on Tuesday. If you missed it, go back and watch it. But binders, combined binders. So my favorite binders are zeolite, charcoal, and fulvic acid. Those three, if you look at the spectrum of all the different kinds of mycotoxins they can help bind and remove, those three cover all your bases, and they're relatively well tolerated at lower doses by most people struggling with mold overgrowth or with mold toxin issues. So binders are important to get them out of you, but beyond that, you definitely want to consider NAC and glutathione, and you want to consider methyl B vitamins to help support the liver's ability to transfer that toxin, that fat-soluble toxin, to a water-soluble toxin. So that's it in a nutshell. Just a very quick kind of overview crash course, because so many of you asked that question after Tuesday's show. So all that being said, let's dive in to your questions today. Let's see. Hannah says, hi, Dr. O. I'm 46 with regular cycles, but for the first time ever, my last period took 11 days to finish instead of its usual 5. Could that mean the start of perimenopause? Is that normal? It's not normal. It's definitely not normal for you, Hannah. And so what I would suggest that you do is, when the next cycle comes, monitor it. If it goes back to your normal 5 days, it could have just been something acutely distressing for your body this time around. Sometimes it is a perimenopause issue, and sometimes it's just a life issue. I've seen many times where acute stressors or major problems, major illnesses will alter a woman's cycle or alter a female cycle. And so if that's part of the history of the last month, maybe consider that as well. Now, if you really want to determine whether or not you're going into menopause, you can also ask your doctor to measure FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, and another hormone called luteinizing hormone. Those two can be measured. They're usually pretty good indicators as to whether or not you might be going into menopause, and those are simple blood tests you can ask for. Mark says, please provide info to become a client. Can we put the website up? We put a phone number up. I don't know if you put our website up there too, Mark, but call that phone number. I think we already put it in. Call the office and have a conversation with one of my team. Is it best to soak true grain-free wild rice before cooking it? For how much time soak? Not necessarily best or worst. I think it's a preference more than anything else. The longer you cook it, the less crunchy and the less hard it is, the easier it is to digest. So soaking is not a necessity for that, so much as just longer cooking times. Does your Detox C powder have ascorbic acid in it? No, it doesn't. But you have to understand that it doesn't matter what vitamin C you use. If you're trying to stay away from oxalates, it doesn't matter what vitamin C you use. There is a metabolic pathway with the breakdown of vitamin C, whether it's ascorbic acid or whole vitamin C, where you're gonna form some oxalates. Now, what we don't tend to find, Jessica, is that people with oxalate issues can tolerate lower amounts of vitamin C, typically in the neighborhood of 500 to 1500 milligram doses, real easy, without much problems. Now, there are exceptions to that rule, very rarely, but most people we find with oxalate issues can tolerate those doses. Nutrition analysis, INA, shows borderline for copper and zinc. What dose of each should I take? Can I take them together? When and for how long? I'm 77. That's a very specific question, Diane. So safe to take as far as zinc goes, 25 to 50 milligrams a day is usually enough in that type of situation. And as far as copper is concerned, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 2.5 to 10 milligrams a day of copper would be a safe range for you to look at. Can you take them together? Yes. Usually zinc and copper go well. There are a number of studies showing that if the ratio of zinc to copper is about 7.5 to 1, meaning 7.5 to 1 zinc to 1 copper. That's a kind of a good way to take them together. Obviously, you want to take those with food because zinc can cause an upset stomach and nausea. But I would start at the lower range of those doses because you're only 90 pounds, and so that's probably going to be sufficient for you. The other thing you want to make sure that you do is incorporate more zinc and copper containing foods. Typically, that best source there would be organ meats, so check those out. Let's see, Kirsten says, I was told by medical providers that sulfur intolerance, bloating, gut pain, sometimes hives on the skin is related to mycotoxins and mold exposure. Does this stem more from liver involvement or gut? So it's not doesn't stem from liver or gut involvement. It's actually more to do with your immune system. So when you're exposed to mold toxins, there's particularly one mold toxin called ZEA, Z-E-A, and that toxin is notorious for shifting the immune system's allergic response to more of a histamine release. So it's when you're exposed to that frequently that can shift your immune system. So that's neither liver nor gut, that's immune system. Now, there are situations too where people develop molybdenum deficiencies. If you haven't watched my crash course on poly B or molybdenum, which is mineral, that deficiency can cause sulfur intolerance and mimic allergies for a lot of people. And what we find, even in people that are in mold, taking molybdenum can be extremely helpful for those individuals to process and tolerate sulfur much more readily. How do you poison mold out? You don't, I mean, so Debbie's asking, how do you poison mold out? What I don't have is the context of what you mean. So do you mean poison out mold that's in your home, that's growing behind your walls environmentally, or do you mean mold potentially growing in your body? I just talked about mold potentially growing in your body and some strategies. You can watch Tuesday's show as well. If you're talking about poisoning mold out of your house, you don't poison it out, you remove it, you remediate it. And the reason why you don't try to aerosolize a bunch of mold killing sprays into your home is because all you really do when you do that is piss the mold off and make it sporate more and make it generate more of its toxins because it's going to fight back. So when we're talking about trying to remove mold from an environment, we never want to use these heavy killing mold toxic sprays. We really predominantly want to remove the mold. And so the way you do that is to isolate and locate the source. And then, if it's growing on furniture, if it's growing on a wall, if it's growing behind a wall, remove that section, right? Remove the mold. Then you scrub your air, clean your walls. You can use HEPA filtration devices. You can use microfibers. If it's a simple job, if it's a more complex job, you really should be working with a really strong and really well qualified and experienced mold remediation company. What air purifier do you recommend? Something that kills or stops mold reproduction? HEPA. HEPA doesn't kill mold. Now, what it does is it captures mold spores. And so it's what we're trying to do is reduce quantitatively how many mold spores are circulating through your air environment. Because if we can reduce that, we're going to reduce all the things that come with it, the mycotoxins, the VOCs, the hyphal fragments, and other things. So a good quality HEPA air filter. If you're talking about one you can plug into the wall and move it around, one of the brands I like is called Air Doctor. I don't know if we have a link to that, Mel, we can post that up for Karina. If you're talking about, looking at a whole house system, there are a number of different options and varieties of filters that can effectively remove mold. Now, if you're talking about something that scours mold and attaches to mold and degrades mold and mycotoxins, that's not an air purifier so much as it's called a hydroxyl ion generator. And so it's a little bit different than an air filter because it doesn't clean the air, but it interacts with mycotoxins and molds and bacteria and viruses to basically break them down and make them less toxic and harmful as you breathe in the particulate. So those, there's a company called High-Tech, H-I-T-E-C-H, High-Tech Air Reactors. Are what those devices are. And they work really well. I actually personally own 2 of them for mold prevention in my home. Let's see. I tested negative for gliadin antibodies, IgA and IgG, but slightly positive on IgE for wheat. Does that mean I don't have celiac disease or wheat gluten sensitivity. So, well, it means you're wheat allergic, Wanda, because an IgE reaction to wheat is an allergy, is what we call a true allergy. If you tested negative on your IgG and IgA for gliadin, it does not mean that you're not gluten sensitive because you only measured gliadin. Gliadin is only one type of gluten. There are hundreds of types of glutens found in grains, gliadin just being the one that's most commonly tested, but not the only one. All that means is you didn't react to gliadin. Your IgG and IgA levels aren't elevated as a result of gliadin exposure. Again, gliadin is one type of gluten found only in wheat. And, outside of that, I don't know, I don't have the context, but did your doctors also test your total IgG and your total IgA? Because if you have IgA deficiency, for example, you can have a false negative IgA gliadin test. We see that all the time in people. I just had 2 cases this week of people who historically had been told they weren't gluten sensitive, and it was because their doctors didn't pre-qualify their antibody levels, and they used antibodies to measure whether or not they were reacting. If you really want to know whether you're gluten sensitive, you are wheat allergic, but if you really want to know whether you're gluten sensitive, the best way to determine that is not antibody testing. The best way to determine that is genetic testing. And there are 2 genes we look at, HLA-DQ2, or actually HLA-DQ alpha 1 and HLA-DQ beta 1. And then there are a variety of different combinations of patterns that we look for on those 2 genes that would indicate whether or not a person has genetic predisposition to react to gluten. So I can put a link up for you in the feed on genetic testing so that you can learn more about it. Let's see here. Can osteoarthritis be caused by gluten sensitivity? Yeah, it can be. I mean, gluten causes autoimmune damage to joints, which is different than osteoarthritis, but gluten also causes malnutrition and malabsorption. And so, for example, if you're malabsorbing vitamin C and folate and zinc, those nutrients are required by your body to properly produce and regulate and maintain your cartilage. And if you're deficient in those long enough, will that contribute to OA, osteoarthritis? Absolutely, it can. So it's a secondary osteoarthritis as induced by malnutrition where gluten really plays a role. And then there are other things ingrained beyond gluten. So like oxalates and lectins are common triggers for autoimmune arthritis and just for joint pain in general. If you haven't, Wanda, read No Grain, No Pain, my book. You can check it out at the library. You can pick it up at Barnes & Noble or Amazon. But read it and apply it, and come back in a month and let us know how did that help your arthritis. What are your thoughts on using VIP? My MRI showed multiple areas of atrophy, so I'll most likely go on it. I was wondering if your family used it. We did not, Amy. VIP is fine. A lot of doctors like it and find that it works really well. A lot of people have had great experiences with it. But my family and I didn't have to use it. So I'm less a fan of, this is just my philosophy. So this doesn't mean there aren't other ways to proverbially skin the cat, so to speak. But my philosophy is the body knows how to heal itself. And the vast majority of medicines and chemical inducers or symptom manipulating medications aren't philosophically in alignment with my core philosophy and principle. I believe the body can heal itself, provided you remove the things that are poisoning it and provided you give the body the tools that it needs to heal and repair. Those are the vitamins and the minerals and the nutrients from food and potentially from supplementation. So, but coming back to your question, I'm not opposed to somebody on VIP, especially if it's helping them. But I've just found with my family, but also clinically, I haven't needed to have people on that in order for them to have success getting out of mold and getting healthy again. What will cause cysts or lesions to form on thyroid glands? Lots of things. Iodine deficiency, vitamin B2 deficiency, fluoride toxicity, bromine toxicity, autoimmune reactions caused by gluten are a very common contributor to cysts forming on thyroid glands. So those are just some low-hanging fruit places to start research, Wanda, but those are real common triggers. I'm tested positive for mold allergy and suggested antihistamines. I get Q severe reaction. to it. Oh, so you get a severe reaction to antihistamines. Yeah, I mean, antihistamines, they block histamine production, obviously, to prevent the symptoms of the allergy. But if you go back to what I said a minute ago, vitamin C, quercetin, we have something called histocyst and something called DAO. All these are designed to stabilize the mast cell membrane that releases histamine so that histamine is less of a problem. You're just supporting regulation of histamine, and DAO is designed to degrade histamine. So if you don't tolerate antihistamines, those are better options. In my opinion, those are better options than antihistamines anyway. Just simply because antihistamines now, they're being linked to Alzheimer's disease, dementia. Antihistamines block stomach acid production, so they'll cause malnutrition if you're on them chronically. They cause immune suppression, so it increases the risk for you to develop other problems, immunologically related problems, if you're on it for chronicity of allergy reactions. And then if you're trying to reduce your mold in your home, get you a good quality HEPA air filter. That'll go a long way too to just reducing the burden on your immune system. What electrolyte deficiency would be most likely to cause periodic hip flex or cramping? It could be any of them. I mean, but the big ones would be calcium, magnesium, and potassium. Those three, super common to have large muscle groups go into spasm when those are low. For colonization in the nose, what should I use? Grapefruit seed extract. Grapefruit seed extract's really good. It has a lot of antifungal properties, so it's definitely something you can try. Neti pots with antimicrobial oils can sometimes be helpful. So putting a drop of oregano or thyme, even rosemary. If you're, I know we start with really, really small amount in a neti pot, and just drain your sinuses out. Those are all things, Barbara, that you could try. Is insomnia, waking up frequently, a symptom of mold? I'm trying to distinguish if it's related to mold or hormone imbalance. Sherry, it can be. For me, it was. I was up 5, 6, 7 times a night when I was in mold at the peak of my illness. And that's true of many people. They're basically, their bodies will not go to sleep and stay asleep because mold toxins stimulate sympathetic nervous system to be in a kind of a chronic fight or flight situation. And when your body is having sympathetic stimulation, sleep is the last thing it wants to do. So sleep becomes very sporadic, and insomnia can be a major trigger. If you're trying to differentiate, I mean, you can ask your doctor to run a mycotoxin test on you. You can also ask your doctor to do, check your hormones, your estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and FSH and LH are all things that I would suggest you have measured to differentiate between which one of those potential triggers are there. And maybe both. I've seen it be that way too. Everybody's entitled to more than one problem, unfortunately. I also have ulcerative colitis and histamine intolerance. My GI only suggested antihistamines and no other stuff like you suggested. Well, try those other things. If they work for you, I'd love to know. Come back next week and let us know if trying them helped you. And maybe if they did, sharing your story of success would help somebody else make a better decision for their health. Have you seen mold detox causing worsening of depression? And what are your thoughts about using 2 teaspoons of maple syrup as a sweetener in chia pudding? Is it safe, or will it increase colonization? Okay, so let's start with question 1. Have I seen mold detox cause worsening of depression? Yes. Mold detox can cause a Herxheimer response, and there's a lot of symptom association with it. And sometimes this is why people have to go at it slower. Lower doses of binders, lower doses of B vitamins, lower doses of glutathione, as opposed to higher doses. As far as the maple syrup question, maple syrup will feed colonization. So it's not something that I would recommend. If you're looking for alternative, you could use something like stevia, allulose, or birchwood xylitol, or monk fruit, if you're just trying to put something that doesn't feed the mold in and sweeten your chia pudding. Let's see. You made an offhanded comment from B12 about B12 from gut bacteria being too low in the digestive tract for the body's optimal absorption. What B vitamins are best absorbed in the stomach and small intestines? They're all best absorbed in the small intestine, period. Not so much the stomach. The small intestine is where the vast majority of B vitamin absorption takes place. Looking for a nutritional support stack for partial tear of common flexor at origin of elbow. So you have a tear. Oh, that's a nasty one. So, I mean, one, I would make sure you're resting it. Number two, nutritionally, omega-3, high doses of omega-3, probably 3 grams. I would be on L-glutamine at probably 3 to 5 grams if you tolerate it at higher doses. So omega-3, 3 grams. L-glutamine, 3 grams. I would look to increase your protein intake for the healing and the repair. For that, you can do several things, but I would do body weight. If you're a healthy body weight, in protein. So if you're 100 pounds, for example, and that's healthy for you as far as a weight is concerned, then that would look like, 100 pounds equals 100 grams of protein per day. Because to heal and repair those injuries, you're going to need more proline, more lysine, more threonine, et cetera. Those amino acids play a crucial role in the building block. I would look to make sure you're getting zinc. Very important for that. And that's 50 milligrams a day is a starting place. I would look to make sure that you are getting adequate amounts of copper with that zinc. And I would make sure that you're also getting enough vitamin C. And in an injury like that, at least 5 grams. 5 grams or more, because you really take it to bowel tolerance. If you're starting to have loose bowels, you can drop the dose down. But vitamin C and copper both, when you're talking about healing those tissues that don't have super rich vascular blood supply. So collagen is a triple helix, meaning it's like 3 strands wrapped around each other. And in between each of these strands, you have what are called collagen crosslinks. And these collagen crosslinks are made and formed and produce with good strength and elasticity through the action of copper and vitamin C. So if your vitamin C and copper is low, what happens with those types of injuries is they'll heal, but then you'll go try to use the arm again and you'll tear it again very easily. So I would start here. This is probably a pretty good place. And then, of course, I would also look at a good quality multivitamin just to get all the others, all the B vitamins and everything else that you need in decent doses. We have something called Ultra Minerals that I would suggest you use. It's a high-powered multivitamin designed to pick up where food may not be adequate, especially in those situations where there's injury. So maybe try that stack and see how it works for you. And let us know how you do. Come back and comment as that thing is healing. How do I bring back my son's brain function? He regressed into autism at 3. C. difficile and a lot of heavy metals. No longer has C. difficile, and I'm still detoxifying him. I assume you mean from the metals. Have you looked at mold, Diane? Because what we're finding is a lot of autistic behaviors and regressions are occurring where there's mold. I've got such powerful stories of people whose children started speaking again and functioning again as a result of getting out of mold. So if you haven't already investigated that as a potential possibility, work with your doctor to get a mycotoxin test done on him and see. You've got to also change his diet if you haven't. The myth is that you just have to treat infection and you just have to treat metals or toxins. But in reality, with these kids, you have to change their diet. There is no sugar. They can't eat sugar. That's not to say they can't have natural sugars that like fruit. I'm talking about processed foods, and I don't know what you're feeding them. I'm not trying to judge you, but you've got to change his diet. And I generally put kids in that spectrum on a no grain, no pain diet as a means to reduce all the potential incoming inflammatory aspects that food can provide, leading to autistic neurological damage. So if you haven't changed his diet, look at that as well. Consider food allergy testing if he hasn't had that done, food sensitivity testing if he hasn't had that done, gluten sensitivity testing if he hasn't had that done. But those all need to be investigated and applied as close to simultaneously as possible. How do we bind if we can't do charcoal, fulvic acid, or zeolite? You can try other things like bentonite clay. You can try fibers. I mean, natural fibers. We have something called ultra fiber. It has multiple different types of fiber in it that also can serve as binding agents. So, I mean, those are other options that you can explore if you don't do well with charcoal or fulvic acid or zeolite. What do you think about rice powder ingredient in supplements if gluten sensitive? No go. I don't recommend it. Rice powder's a no go if you're trying to be truly gluten free, no grain, no pain. We see so many people come in, Philippe, with products. They'll bring in their products. They're suffering. The first thing I'll do on day one is say, quit taking these supplements. A lot of times by the next time I'm seeing them a month later or so, they're feeling better because they're not poisoning themselves by the rice filler anymore. So not a fan of the rice filler at all. Let's see here. Could you touch on coffee and cross-reactive proteins as it relates to gluten sensitivity? So it's not so much that the coffee cross-reacts tremendously with gluten. That's more of a rare thing, Deborah. Where coffee is typically a problem isn't in conjunction with it behaving so much like gluten, although there's some small studies pointing that out clinically. That's not my biggest holdup or problem with the coffee. The biggest problem with the coffee is that it predominantly contains a lot of mycotoxins, particularly ochratoxin A. And this right here, this is a poison. This is going to poison the kidneys. It's going to damage the brain. It's going to reduce healing time because it delays DNA and RNA and protein synthesis. So that's one of the big problems with people that continue to drink coffee when their body's already sick and they're trying to heal. Now, you also have to be worried about coffees that are what are they? There are a couple different brands, and I don't ever buy them, so I don't remember what they are. But they're powderized. So they're the kind of coffee that you would add to hot water. And if you add to that hot water, you just stir it up and it makes your coffee, right? So these instant coffees, if you will, a lot of times will have barley malt in them. They put that in as a sweetening agent or as part of the ingredient list. And this is, of course, this is going to be a source of gluten, barley malt. And so a lot of people just don't think about coffee and gluten in that light. So this could be part of the problem. One of the other bigger issues with coffee is the caffeine. If you are sick, if your adrenal glands are burned out, caffeine is a neurostimulant. It's going to increase the pressure on your adrenal output. And what this does is it crashes a lot of people and it delays their ability to fully recover because it keeps them in a state of sympathetic dominance. When you push adrenal hormones like noradrenaline and adrenaline, what you're basically doing is you're optimizing for sympathetic nervous system function, which is the fight or flight nervous system. And we don't heal very well when we're in chronic fight or flight. So if you're using coffee, these are all the potential things to think about. If you've looked at the ingredients and they're super clean and there's no barley malt, then there's not going to be a gluten potential there so much, but you do have to consider those other factors. See, Katie says, would the information on the whiteboard you provided for the tear also help with tennis elbow or golfer's elbow? Yeah, absolutely. It'll work with any type of soft tissue injury, tendon, ligament, even muscular tears directly. It'll help with any of those. If we can, maybe post. We have a more in depth. We use this for surgery too. We use this. There's a protocol we use for people that have had surgery where they've had scheduled trauma, and we're just trying to heal them faster. But that's another one that's written down. I know I erased it already, Katie. So if you missed it or didn't catch it, you could obviously rewind and screen capture. But we can also post a link to that surgical protocol, which has some other things that I also didn't talk about. Does raw honey have a greater health benefits than typical honey? Well, I mean, typical honey is cut with corn syrup, so I would argue that raw honey is better in that regard for sure. Raw honey's also not been cooked and highly processed, so you're going to get a lot of the medicinal benefits of honey, come from those active ingredients that can be damaged with processing. So yeah, I mean, I would go with raw honey over processed honey any day. How low of a dose of quercetin can you use with zinc to improve loss of sense of smell and taste? How low of a dose? I mean, I would, if I'm trying to be therapeutic and, with somebody in my office, Melinda, I'm not using less than 2 grams. So, I mean, can you take less than that? Sure. But I'm not going to use less than that because think of, throwing a bucket of water on a forest fire. When you're talking about doses, sometimes people fail in their nutritional supplementation because the dose is equivalent to the bucket of water on a forest fire. It's just not strong enough. And so it's not going to do much for them. So you've got to, with those types of things, you've got to make sure the dose is high enough to be effective to overcome. Is it possible to fuse natural butter with earth minerals to use as a topical skin ointment? Maybe yeah, it's possible. Remind me of the type of testing you prefer when doing nutritional testing. INA, it's called INA. That's Facebook Mel. We could put a link up for them on that. Best probiotic strain for leaky gut for an athlete. There's not one strain that's the best. It's not like this strain is magically, it's not like Lucky Charms and magic of Lucky Charms, right? No, I'm not trying to pick on you, Ricard, but honestly, it's diversity of strains is what we're after. So if you're an athlete and you're trying to find a really solid probiotic, there are a couple that I would recommend. One's called Biotic Defense, and it's a blend of very hardy strains that have been shown to help with leaky gut. And that's really one of the core issues with athletes that push themselves. When you exercise aggressively, that can contribute to leaky gut. And so good probiotic like Biotic Defense would be very supportive in that regard. But there's not like one best strain. There are a lot of different strains, and they all have similar functions, and some of them are very unique and are used for certain things, but there's not one best strain for athletics. Let's see, how low, answered that one. Just started reading No Grain, No Pain yesterday. Looking forward to what's to come. Hopefully this will help all my physical pain at least a little. Yeah, Colton, come back and let us know, man. Definitely keep us up to date. I love it when people read the book and find a solution and feel good and find a path forward. Pain Doc suggested CYP 450 gene test for me, but wouldn't order it. Yeah. That's sad. I mean, if they're going to suggest a test, they should be able to order it. But you got to understand that a lot of doctors, unfortunately, they're more interested in the insurance company's opinion of what they order, because the insurance companies track them. It's like having Big Brother watch everything that you do. Insurance companies, and this is why I quit insurance. Well, I guess it's been almost 20 years ago. They were tracking us, and what they did is they didn't like what I was doing because it wasn't the same as all my other peers. And so they started wanting to do case reviews on a lot of my charts. and they started asking for refunds. And they weren't asking for refunds because the patients weren't getting better. They were asking for refunds because it was not standard of care, because standard of care sucks. Insurance companies are incentivized and motivated to keep doctors in that box of standard of care. And so if your doctor knows there's something that he should be doing for you, but insurance has a tendency to frown in that direction, they won't do it, because the insurance companies will scarlet letter that doctor, and then that doctor will quit getting new patients from insurance companies. They'll quit referring, and doctors trying to stay in business. Medicine's a business. That shouldn't be a newsflash, but a lot of people don't remember that. Like, medicine's very much a business, and doctors are in business to make money. I mean, yeah, they're in business to try to help people, but at the end of the day, they're in business like any other business, and you have to understand, if you follow the money, a lot of times you'll get the answer. But I know we do a lot of advanced testing in my practice, and that's why we quit the insurance, because it was just, you try to get them to cover the insurance. They would want you to write, 20-page reports for them to justify what you were trying to order in a patient, and then they wouldn't approve it anyway, and then they wouldn't do a proper case review. They'd give you a nurse to do a case review who didn't know anything about the topic at hand, and didn't know anything about the lab testing that you were doing. And they're basically just they're shills for the industry, and so they're designed to say no. I mean, if you go back, I know a lot of you are frustrated with insurance and with medicine in general. I think we all are at this point. They've had 70 years to run healthcare, and they've driven it into the ground and into $4 trillion of debt a year without really helping and impacting non-acute disease. Acute disease they've done fantastic with. Non-acute disease, they've just made people sicker and more unhealthy and drugged them up. And it's not really been, in my opinion, much of a benefit. Anyway, rant over. Let's see, max dose for quercetin daily and what duration? You can get up to 5 grams of quercetin a day. I wouldn't go longer than a few months without being supervised. But, if you keep it around that, and if you're not being supervised, you should be okay. But if you find that it doesn't sit well with you, then obviously don't go up to that. Like, don't construe this as medical advice. I'm just trying to give you generalized ranges that we see work really well for people, Lisa. Paulina says, just bought No Grain, No Pain. Love it. Love it. Thanks for supporting mission. And I really mean it. I hope the book helps you. I was able to fix my chronic fatigue syndrome and 8 years of hypothyroid, low blood pressure by sublingual B vitamins, methylation support, and liver detox. Allopathic doctors were clueless. Yeah, I hear you, man. I'm glad you were able to get all that dialed in. That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that story. Mike says, I'm interested in the supplements you recommended for muscle tear, etc. I missed it. Mike, this show is being recorded. You can come back and watch it afterwards. It'll be there, especially if you're subscribing to our newsletter. We send these out. But just rewind it. When the show's over, rewind it to that section. You'll be able to recapture it. It's hard time eating enough protein. How about taking essential fatty acid supplements? So protein and essential fatty acids aren't the same thing. So I'm not sure I understand your question in that regard. But a lot of people have a hard time eating the protein, and so they find that protein powders can be very helpful in that regard. And certainly they can be. I use them after working out, especially on days where I know I'm going to be super swamped and busy and I don't have enough time to get all my meal prep done. I'll use ultra pure protein for that, and that's a quick 40 grams of protein, out of a glass. Really easy to do. Let's see here. I think if you only did one, a multivitamin is better than a B complex because the multi has selenium, zinc, iodine. Yeah, I don't know if that's a question so much as it is a commentary. But if you're doing one supplement, let's say you're just really trying to lock it in and minimize your pills, the best thing you could possibly do if you're doing one thing is a good quality multivitamin. And I'm not talking about the crap at the pharmacy and I'm not going to mention the brands, but we've analyzed those years ago, and I think their raw ingredients cost about 8 cents, and they were selling the bottles for like $12. So their markup was astronomical, but the product they were delivering was total crap. I'm talking about a high quality product that has bioactivated nutrients, methylated B vitamins, active forms of minerals, chelated forms of minerals for best absorption and utilization. Ultra nutrients. I designed that formula almost 20 years ago, and it's a tried and true formula. I mean, doctors around the globe use that formula. We actually get it to them. They use it in their clinics. We've got clinics in Europe, and it's a clinic in Cambodia that are using that formula because it's just so amazing and works so well. Sherry says, I'm moving out of mold this weekend. I bought a new mattress 4 to 5 months ago and immediately covered it with a waterproof dust mite protector. Do you think it's safe to take with me? That's a tough one, Sherry, or Sherry. I don't want to mispronounce your name, but I mean, if that mattress has been in a super moldy home for 5 months, it's like me personally, I know it's expensive. Mattresses are way overrated and overpriced, but if you're super sick or anyone in your family is super sick, to me, it's just a risk. And I can't tell you what to do. I know John Banta, if you look him up, he talks about ways to remediate a mattress where you wrap the mattress itself in Tyvek and insert a filter so that as you sit on the mattress, it has a filter mechanism within it. And so that may be a way to more affordably remediate your mattress. But that's a tough call because it's just part of it just depends on how sick you are and how exposed that mattress was. And with the covers and everything else, it's that's a level of me thinking that's better than not having the covers, but it's a hard decision to make. Kirsten says, you mentioned sulfur and phase 2 detox and molybdenum. How can those of us with sulfur gut issues get relief? You got to figure out, a lot of times, Kirsten, the sulfur in the gut issue is yeast. And so most likely you have a yeast overgrowth or colonization in your gut that hasn't been dealt with if you're struggling in that regard. So I would look at that as a potential for your problem. Let's see here. Can mold exposure cause high histamine? Absolutely, it can. It can and does on a very regular basis. The people that I see that collect the most allergies, they develop tremendous amount of food allergies and environmental allergies and chemical sensitivities are in mold. And it's because of that immune mechanism shift that occurs. I have some major tissue slouching after using chlorhexidine soap that was recommended prior to surgery. Thinking I might try using castor oil. Your thoughts? I think it's a good idea, Diana. Definitely. Get some sunlight on that wound too if you haven't already. Direct sunshine, especially early morning, 9 to 11. Let's scroll down in the center there. Julie's asking about what's the difference between your multi-nutrients versus your ultra nutrients for one that is gluten sensitive. They're both comparable, Julie. The biggest difference is multi-nutrients is higher in B vitamins. So if you're looking for an even stronger dose of B vitamins, you can go with multi-nutrients. I have found the reason I have 2 formulas is that men tend to tolerate multi-nutrients really, really well. They do better with higher doses of those B vitamins versus women. When you hit certain range of B vitamins in a formula, it changes the taste. It can cause that undesired burping effect, and it can cause nausea. So I find that women generally tolerate ultra nutrients better than multi-nutrients. Again, that's just an experience share with you, but they're both great products. So you could use either one. It's just an individual preference as to how much more B vitamin or how much you may be deficient in B vitamins. I have TTR gene, but no symptoms yet. Apparently, it makes one have cardiac disease, digestive problems, and have amyloid in the brain. Anything I can do to ensure the symptoms never manifest? Yeah, I mean, follow the 6 fundamental tenets, Diane. Number 1, eat real, whole, clean food. Number 2, go to bed on time. Number 3, exercise. Number 4, sunshine daily. Number 5, clean air. Number 6, clean water. Genes aren't a death sentence or aren't a life sentence. Gene risks are adjudicated by behavior versus genetic disease like cystic fibrosis, Down syndrome, inborn errors of metabolism. Those you're not going to change, at least not yet. We may be coming into a realm where that's going to change, but at this point, your best bet with any kind of genetic mutation is to just do what we call the non-negotiable fundamentals of health. Would a CYP genetic glitch impact liver's ability to detox? Yeah, can. You can have fast CYPs and slow CYPs. There are different CYPs that are looked at. Some increase your metabolism of certain medications. So like this is classic is with like pain medication. Some fast metabolizers will take pain medication and it won't work, especially like if you're in the dentist and you've ever had the experience where they inject you with a local anesthetic to get dental work done and it's like it didn't work. Or it worked for only 10 minutes and then then you were in pain again and they had to inject you again. We see that as a very common thing with pain medications. So CYP testing can be very valuable in that regard to help you understand how quickly or slowly you might metabolize different medications based on how those medicines are metabolized by the liver. Most medicines are metabolized in the CYP by the liver, and there are different subcategories of the cytochrome P450 system that, again, genetically those things can be tested for. Which one of your vitamin supplements is best for a hernia? It's a small hernia at the scrotum. So it's a very small one. I would go with protein. Go with protein and probably a multivitamin. Those two just for generalized support, Victor. The protein to support the soft tissue around the hernia and the multivitamin to give you the vitamins and minerals necessary to run the metabolism to help the body with the most expedient ability to recover. Some people can't buy your products. Could you consider iHerb so we can all benefit? Yeah, we are considering that. Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. We're in the process of looking at potentials, but unfortunately, I'm pretty independent minded. When people want you to do things beyond the way you want to do them, I generally have a hesitancy to engage in doing business with them. So that's part of the holdup. So I took my grandson to a doctor who's practiced 20 years and requested an oats test for him. She said, absolutely not. I don't know what that is and can't interpret it. This is what we the people deal with. Yeah, it is. An oats test is fine. It's honestly, there are a lot of doctors like to use them, and I've used them on occasion, but the problem with oat testing is that they're largely, what's the best way to put it? They're extrapolatory. So when you do an oat test, oat stands for organic acids test. And so you're looking and measuring different organic acids that are produced by the body, but these organic acids can also be produced by microbes in the body. And if you have high or low levels of certain organic acids, then you have to extrapolate what it might mean. And that's what I mean by extrapolatory. Kind of the analogy real world would be you walk outside and your driveway is wet. And so you have to extrapolate why that happened. Now, maybe it rained, maybe somebody washed their car, maybe the hose was left on, maybe the sprinkler systems went off, maybe there's a leaky pipe. it could be any of those types of reasons. And that's the problem with extrapolatory testing. It's not direct, it's not definitive. So if you extrapolate incorrectly, you could end up treating somebody for something that isn't really going to help them be successful. And I would look at an oat test as more of a secondary test than a primary test. Now, what they are good at is looking for oxalic acid, which is a byproduct of either eating too many oxalates in your diet or having yeast overgrowth or being in mold. And so that is one parameter on that test that that can be somewhat helpful and less extrapolatory. But as a whole, oat wouldn't be the first thing that I would consider as the top priority for somebody to understand in and of itself. Now, without the context of other things. So like if I have an oat test, but I also have a vitamin and mineral deficiency test and a food sensitivity test and a gut culture, now I can put all that together and I'm not having to extrapolate. I'm really painting a picture of what is. But an oat by itself is highly extrapolatory. Can mold be a problem if you live in the desert? Yeah, absolutely. I have a case right now, one of the worst cases of mold-related brain illness I've ever seen, of a woman who's in Arizona, in the desert. There's equal problems in the desert. You don't have the humidity externally outside, but you do have the conditioned air spaces and the building materials and the hot outside. So when you get really hot outside, really cold inside, you get condensation, and that can lead to water accumulation and mold growth. You don't have to have running water or a pipe leak or a roof leak to have mold. So just as prominent in the desert due to building failures and inadequate construction as it is, say, in Houston, Texas, where Hurricane Alley is. You said purify my air and water and sunshine, and I'm improving. Here, my water, Berkey filter had mold in it from my old house, using zero water now. Is that okay? Is that a filter? If you're saying using zero water, is that a RO filtered water? How's that water filtered? I would say, the best way, depending on where you live, if you live in the city, RO water filtration is the best, but you want to add electrolyte to it if you're using it. Berkey works well too. If you get another Berkey filters are pretty good. They don't remove fluoride as well, even with their fluoride attachments. They still don't get it all out. I've seen a number of cases of fluoride toxicity, even in people using Berkey filters. But it's not like one is the best. It's that you just want to make sure you're getting the pharmaceuticals and the chlorine and chloramines, fluoride, and other junk out of your water, and making sure that it is electrolyte balanced so that you can maintain your hydration. Are methylated B vitamins tolerated by a deficient elderly woman with weakness? Yeah, generally methylated B vitamins are tolerated by most. Where we run into trouble with methylation tolerance is in people who have major detoxification issues. Usually those are people that are in mold or people that are still eating the wrong foods and poisoning themselves and inadvertently not even knowing, or they have heavy metal toxicity like mercury toxicity, and that sometimes creates a conundrum for them. I had receding gums with pain. Noticed the pain stopped after taking MS. You mean MSM? I would imagine you mean MSM and not MSN. And brushing my teeth with it too. When I stopped MSN, the pain returned. Do I need to take that all the time? You need to get, most likely need to get sulfur and B vitamins in your diet. And that's probably where the real issue is, Claire. I would look to that, and then keep using it, but look to that and then try to wean back and see if it helps you. Do you believe the body can repair a meniscus tear? Yes. The orthodoctor says no, but I find it hard to believe. Orthopedics, look, they're great doctors. They can do great surgery, but they're also incentivized to want to do surgery. So you always like a second or a third opinion. I like to see, if I'm trying to get another opinion about whether or not, there's a surgery necessary, Diana, go see a good chiropractor who has specialty and, well, they all have specialty in neuromusculoskeletal. So They're all going to be good at diagnosticians and good clinicians as it relates to physical therapy rehab of a knee. And so get a second opinion. You may find that the chiropractor looks at it, checks the MRI, and says, no, this one's too far gone. I agree with the orthopedic. And they may be right. But never trust a single opinion on something so egregious or aggressive as a surgery. Always get a second, even potentially a third opinion. But can they heal? Yeah, they can. But they can also be so problematic that a surgery is required. Zero water filter pictures, yeast oxalate connection. Good to know. Okay, no question. Will alert us immediately. What electrolytes would you add to the water? Any recommendations? Just a good brand that doesn't have corn derivative. A lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them have flavoring agents that are corn derivatives. So you have to watch out for those. I'm impartial to the taste. A lot of people want their electrolytes to taste like candy water, make their water taste like candy. And I'm just don't have that sweet affliction personally. So I like some of the brands that are they just taste like salty seawater to the water. Those are the ones that don't have all the other chemical flavoring agents or natural flavoring agents or synthetics. But there are several brands out there, Kersey, that just basically it's like adding a little bit of seawater to your water. One of the better ones is called Concentrace. I'd like to hear your views on the usefulness of live blood analysis to guide decisions in diet and detox. I think live blood analysis is fine as a tool, but I don't think it's definitive. I mean, a lot of times when doctors say, oh, I see a parasite, they're not seeing a parasite. They're calling it a parasite, but it's not necessarily a parasite. A lot of times doctors will see rouleau, which is clumping of red blood cells on live blood analysis, which is an indicator of poor blood viscosity. And so that can help be a good guide and help you understand at least the rheologic properties of the blood. But it doesn't tell you why, right? So it's the component when you take an image, and dark field microscopy is an image, right? You're taking an image of the blood. And now it's a live time slide that you're looking at, but it's still an image. And so an image, it's kind of like, okay, I have a picture of a blue car. Okay, how did they paint that car? What factory was that car made in? What's the brand of tires? Like all the devil in the details that I also might want to know won't come from the still frame image of the picture. And that's not to say it can't be helpful and useful in some cases as a piece of the puzzle, but by itself, I see a lot of people try to use it by itself as the end all be all solution to guiding their guidance around their patient care. And I don't agree with that. I think you have to be more comprehensive. Let's see here. If in mold, should I not use methylated vitamins? You shouldn't. It's not that you shouldn't use them. You just should use them with caution and probably look at starting with lower doses. We're generally, the one we see people in mold really react to, probably the biggest, is methylcobalamin, B12. And so using hydroxycobalamin instead in that situation is oftentimes much better tolerated, Karina. We have a product called hydroxycobalamin at Gluten Free Society you can check out. What do you think about sea moss? I think it's okay. I think it can be a good source of iodine. We actually use sea moss in one of our thyroid formulas. So I'm not opposed to it. You can use it as a food source, and it has good nutrition in it. I have ulcerative colitis, celiac disease, histamine intolerance, and mold allergy. Can only tolerate potatoes and zucchini, reacting to cauliflower and broccoli. What can I do? You need to go get help. You need to get with a doctor who understands comprehensive testing, who can give you a more complete picture than just names. You've been given names. Why do you have ulcerative colitis? Why do you have celiac? Why do you have histamine intolerance? Those are names. Knowing what you have without knowing why you have it is an endeavor in fruitlessness and hopelessness. And I don't say that to make you hopeless, but I say that for you to challenge your doctors better, or find a doctor who's willing to work with you, who's going to ask that next question, which is not what do we call your illness, but why do you have your illness? It's the most important question that needs to be answered. Is it okay to take alpha lipoic acid if you have mercury fillings? There's debate on it. I've seen people use it clinically and not have flares, so I'm not sold one way or the other. I think it's a case by case basis. I don't agree that it deposits the mercury into the brain. I mean, one of the whole premises of alpha lipoic acid is to help get the mercury out of the body. So by taking it, it absolutely doesn't guarantee that you're going to deposit it from your filling into your brain. I don't agree with that. I think that was Andy Cutler's work, but we just don't see eye to eye. It's not to say he's not a smart guy and didn't have great things to say about metal detox, but doctors have different opinions. What is your go-to test for hormones? Urine or saliva testing? There isn't a go-to test for hormones because hormones are too comprehensive. With hormones, you have to consider more than just measuring of the hormone itself. So you have the hormone, and then you have the metabolites of the hormone, and then you have the hormone receptors, and then you have the proteins that might interact in the bloodstream with the hormone. So there's not like a perfect go-to. There's a multitude of different tests that we would look at hormones with, depending on the person, depending on their situation. So, there are a lot of popular branded tests that are out there, but I don't subscribe to any one of them as the only like perfect go-to. What would be a sign you're reacting to methylated B vitamins? Anxiety would be probably one of the bigger ones, Kersey, that we see that people have. Anxiety and increased nervousness, heart racing. Think speeding up, right? Think the body is speeding up, and those are generally the symptoms that we might see somebody taking methylated B and reacting to them. As a Christian, we know the power of prayer. Have you seen any of your patients healed from mold illness and able to get out of their home healed from prayer? No, I haven't. And that's not to say I'm not a believer in the power of spontaneous healing through prayer. But I just personally haven't seen it. So no, I mean, the answer is no there. What would you do for a Baker's cyst behind the knee? I would run tests to try to determine why it's there in the first place. There's not like a therapy or a treatment per se that I would pick among others, but Baker's cysts have reasons that they form, and so I would want to try to reverse engineer that. Yeah, I like that comment that Tanya made on from the previous comment, which is, as a Christian, the power of prayer and healing from mold. And the comment was, the Bible says, get out of your house if you have mold. And that's absolutely true. Leviticus has a pretty robust section on rules for mold. People forget that. They don't understand. In the Bible, it says that remove every timber, remove every stone, and take it, I'm paraphrasing, take it to the edge of town to a dirty place and bury it. Like, it doesn't say keep your mattress, and it certainly doesn't say preserve your house. It says tear it down and take it to a dirty place and bury it. I mean, mold is no joke. It's dangerous business. And I think we're in our world. And look, I was guilty of it too. This isn't judgment on any of you. I try not to be that way. Judge not lest you be. But man, we're so attached to material things as a society. We really are. And our homes are part of that, and all the crap in our homes that, there was so much stuff in my home that I probably won't remember. It's not to say that it didn't have sentimental value, and it's not to say there aren't things that I will absolutely miss and cherish and am sad to see go, but ultimately they are material things. And as humans, we tend to want to cling to those things. And to me, it boiled down to really one simple thing: get out of the house if you want to live, stay in the house if you want to die. And that's really fundamentally, when it comes to mold, that's the paradigm that should be going through your mind, not how can I stay in this house that's killing me and poisoning me. I mean, I just had a patient 2 weeks ago. Oh man, I've been working with her for a while, but I told her to get out of the house 2 years ago. Or, to escape. And you know, I know that not everybody can pick up and move, and that, you know, financially it's not always as easy as just getting up and getting out, but anybody can afford a tent. And that's not to say that's ideal, and that's not to say that's the perfect solution, but she stayed in the house for 2 years, and her health has deteriorated at a breakneck speed in the last 6 months. And now she's at a position where she's losing functionality because she didn't get out. Don't wait till you get to that point. That's my point. I hate to see people do that. I mean, mold is one of the few things. I mean, in the past, I've been practicing almost 25 years, and of all the things I've seen patients die from, you know, most of it's been mold. People refusing to want to leave moldy homes, and the consequences of that are, you know, are life-threatening. I mean, I've seen cases where people had mold infections growing in their lung. I've seen cases where people develop cancers caused by molds. I've seen cases where people develop such a severity of depression and destruction of capacity to function that they just wasted and died in those homes. It's just not a joke. And that's why I almost retired. It's why I wanted to quit being a doctor altogether. I was ready. I was this close to stepping away because that conversation about mold is so heavy. You know, and imagine, and I'm not asking for pity here, guys. Don't take it that way. I'm just trying to iterate this scenario. Imagine having 20 conversations a week with people trying to convince them that their house is killing them. And imagine, you know, half those people maybe take action and the other half refuse to, but they still rely on you to try to doctor them. And so you're watching them die, and you know what's coming because they refuse to take the steps that are necessary to get out of that situation. That's heavy weight. And, you know, it was that heavy weight that made me want to quit doing it altogether until mold hit my house. When mold hit my house, that was God's way of telling me, you're not leaving these people behind. You have to stay in the trenches. So I'm staying there, but it's tough, man. It's a tough situation. I don't wish it on my worst enemy. But you have to take it seriously and respect it. Churches everywhere have mold. I see so many people get sick when they go to church. In my practice, it's like we just had a family. The husband was a contractor, and the wife was really sick, and she, you know, they wanted to go to church, but she couldn't go to church because every time she did, she'd be in bed for 3 days because of the mold. So the husband fixed the church for free. They went in there and remediated the church. But we see moldy churches all the time because depending on the church, you know, buildings get old and they don't always get properly maintenance. And so sometimes it's not the building itself was built wrong. It's the building itself is getting old and not being maintained or taken care of appropriately. You get water damage, and, you know, and the mold will grow. So the military is probably, in my opinion, the worst, because all of our military housing is, I mean, I can't say all, but a huge chunk of our military housing, our soldiers are being housed in mold, and they're being gaslit by the upper rank. It's awful. I mean, there have been many congressional hearings on this problem, and the Congress says, you need to fix this, and the military leaders say, well, we're going to fix it, and they paint lipstick on the pig, and they don't do anything about it, and they send crappy maintenance people out to do Clorox and bleach and paint the walls and hide the problem and make our troops sick. And then, you know, and it's just a terrible situation. Is it possible to prolong perimenopause? Yes. Diana, I have an article on, if you're gluten sensitive, you should check this out, because we know that people with gluten sensitivity who don't change their diet lose 15 years of their menstrual cycle over the course of their life on average. So to answer your question, if you're eating gluten and you're gluten sensitive, could you go into early menopause? Yes, you could. If you stopped eating gluten, could you back that up? Yeah, I've seen women who lost their cycle for years go gluten-free. They get their cycle back, and they actually weren't in menopause. They were having endocrinopathy, endocrine disorder, dysfunction as a result of eating the wrong food. Would a lower dose of methylated B vitamin be tolerated if that person happened to be sensitive? Yes, sometimes. It's unique to the person, really. Does mold cause balding in men? It can, but not always. But there are definitely scenarios where the inflammation can lead to autoimmunity. And so one of the conditions that we see as an autoimmune condition, and it's not just in men, but also in women, is something called alopecia areata, which is an autoimmune destruction of the hair follicle. I think I'm so scared of leaving our dream home only to move into another moldy home. That's it, isn't it? I mean, that was the conundrum for my family too. You know, I think that's a conundrum for a lot of people. There's not a perfect answer to it. When we recovered, BJ, we left initially to a hotel. Once we figured out it was mold, we walked out of the house with clothes on our back and our dogs. Our dog. But the first hotel we stayed in was moldy. I mean, we didn't stay. We went, we checked in, and we checked out immediately because the room obviously had mold in it. The second place we landed, you know, we didn't see any observable signs. We didn't know, but we stayed there for 2 months. It was an extended stay hotel. Stayed there for 2 months trying to figure out what the next step needed to be. It was expensive. Was it something that I wanted to have to pay for or afford? No, it was very expensive to do that. But what choice did we have? I mean, our second choice was really literally go pitch a tent in your backyard, which I would have done, by the way. I wouldn't have not done that. If I didn't have the means to pay for the hotel, I would absolutely have pitched a tent in my backyard. Easy decision in my book. And I know I'm biased because I see it every day. I see people struggle every day. So for me, it's a no-brainer decision. But I know not everybody is there in their mind. And, you know, it is a concern that the next place you move into might also be that way. And that's why it's important to get a plan and get a strategy so that that doesn't happen. Have you any thoughts on the work of Dr. Campbell? According to him, it shouldn't take years to recover from mold with the right treatment. I've got a lot of opinions. I honestly don't know. I know of Dr. Campbell. I have never interviewed him or spoken with him. I've read some of his work. And I think we see eye to eye on a lot of things. And I think there are probably some things we don't. I don't disagree that it shouldn't take years to recover from mold, not because of the right treatment. I think the vast majority of people who aren't recovering from mold aren't recovering not because they're not getting treatment. I think they're not recovering because they're not out of the mold. And I think that's where most people get failed. This is what happened through my experience. When I was in my home, historically in my practice, in my clinic, I'd always kind of relied on the mold inspectors and the mold remediators to be experts in their field and to do their damn jobs. And what I came to realize was they're not all experts and they're not all doing their jobs effectively. And a lot of them are gaslighting. And they don't understand mold illness. And so they minimize it. And this happened to me in my own home where we had, I think we had 4 different inspections. Even with positive tests, they were trying to gaslight my wife and I and tell us, oh, it's not that big a deal. Mold is everywhere. It's just in the dust. You know, meanwhile, she's sick. I'm not feeling super whippy. And by the time, you know, we had, you know, 4 botchy, crummy mold inspections, we finally got somebody that knew what they were talking about, and within 5 minutes found evidence of mold, and that's how we made our decision. But unfortunately, the support system around identifying mold, diagnosing it, and remediating it is flawed. It's not perfect. Just like the medical system is flawed and not perfect. Not every doctor is mold literate. It's the same thing in the mold inspection and remediation services industry. And so the most important part is to find it and remediate it. That's why the job of the doctor is to be so objective that nobody can argue. It's to be so scientifically entrenched in objectivity that there's no speculation as to whether or not the person is being exposed to mold. Now you just have to go find it. That's the way I try to handle it. I don't want people to be in the back of their minds thinking, oh, it can't be mold or it isn't mold. No, I want them to have so much evidence and so much proof from their own bodies that now it's just a matter of finding the right inspector, to go find out where they're being exposed. Because once that happens, what we find is there's a confidence level now going in. When we find it, it's just a simple either remediate or move. There is no question mark. Is this it? Is this not it? It's just a very simple remediate or move. But most of these people that are struggling for years, it's because they either moved into new mold, or their remediator didn't do their job right, or they had an inspection done and it was a half-assed inspection and they had they were misinformed. I get cases all the time of people with that scenario. And then we go in and we find it. It's just because I'm adamant and objective. And I think anyone in this area should be super adamant and objective. I know I'm kind of got off on a rant there around mold, but these questions keep coming. Let's go up on the left. I love that. Lisa says, I listened. Thank God you sounded the alarm. Thank you, Dr. Osborne. Under your care since March of this year and under your protocol, worth every minute and penny and everything we've had to do to get out of the house back in February, temporary housing, and we are just now getting into a new home in a few weeks. Love it. Love hearing that, Lisa. Thanks for sharing. And then this comment, I fought for 2 years to stay at my apartment while I looked for other things, but I wasn't as serious as I needed to be, and I almost died because of it. That's what we tend to see. People, get sicker and sicker, and then they lose their ability to take action and think properly. Because when you're in mold, your brain goes. And when you can't think, like every decision becomes 10 times harder. And if you thought the decision was hard before, it being in mold longer just makes the decision even worse. Yeah, a lot of comments on people's experience. Guys, go make sure you're reading the comments. There's gold in them. There's gold and there's support in them for all of you who may be dealing with it. Does mold cause asthma attacks or symptoms? Yes, absolutely does. Sometimes for days and it's sometimes not for days and then attack. Yeah, it can cause sporadic ups and downs with asthmatic-like symptoms. As a matter of fact, can we put up if you guys go to moldjacked.com, I'm going to put the link up. There's there's a quiz that you can take that will, if you answer the questions honestly, will help you potentiate the possibility you may be in mold. It's free. All you got to do is take it. Number two, there's a very extensive article on the symptoms of mold exposure. And I think everybody should have that and go through it and read it, especially if you're still struggling and you've changed your diet and you're doing all the things right. Somebody says, I actually smell mold on people after they've left their homes and washed their clothes. It sticks to them. Yeah, I do all the time in my practice. Sometimes when they come in, it's not a telecall, but if they're in person, sometimes I just smell them as soon as I walk in the door, and it prompts me to test them, and then we get them out of it. Melinda says, guess you can be a mold-free warrior too. I am. I think half of the country will be by the time we're done educating them. Mold is the epidemic of our time. It's a bigger problem than everything else medicinally, I think, that we face, mold, because it defines the air quality. I think between food quality and the air quality, those two things are the things that we can't always control, because so many people are poorly educated about food quality. They don't even know what real food is because they've been reared up and raised not understanding it. They've got parents that don't understand it. As a matter of fact, I spoke at a school 20 years ago. It was an elementary school. I was invited to come out and talk. It's in my town. I spoke, and I'm you guys know who I am if you've watched me for a long time. I don't pull any punches. I'm honest. I'll say it like it is, even to 5-year-olds and 10-year-olds. And I said it like it was. I got so many complaints from parents. Like the parents were calling the school, bitching out the principal for having me out because it was honest to the kids. Because as I talked to the kids about nutrition, they went home and they criticized the meals. They criticized the food on the plate. They criticized what their parents were doing. They criticized the McDonald's and the pizza and all the other nonsense. And so because that's so socially accepted, I got kicked out and never was invited back, for being honest, right? And that's typically the case. People don't want to hear it. They don't want to lose. They want to pay the convenience tax, which is, I want to avoid the hard things in life for the hard things in life, right? I want to avoid doing the right things in order to live my life in convenience, taking a perceived easy path, but in reality is I'm taking the much harder path because I'm losing functionality by doing the wrong things. And so food quality is part of that's entrenched in our culture, that, you know, you can eat anything and it doesn't matter. And air quality is taken for granted because people don't realize just how pervasive poor air quality in homes is. Between the chemicals sprayed on your furniture and carpet and walls, you combine that with moisture and mold, you have a recipe for frank and overt illness that is, you know, very hard to get people to understand. And that's why it's so hard, because there's so many industries involved. And it's not like any one industry is saying we want to poison people. They're all just doing a really shitty job and not doing the research and trying to profit. And so the outcome of that is a bunch of people are making a lot of money off of other people who are then becoming sick, who are then becoming victimized to a medical system that also sucks and just wants to throw drugs and gaslight their patients. And then from there, it's, you know, what is a person supposed to do? Because the experts aren't helping them, and the other people that are supposed to know what they're talking about and know what they're doing aren't doing it. And so here we all are in forums like mine trying to figure it out. So I'm glad you're here today. You mentioned telehealth. Is that an option to work with your practice? Yes. We put a number up, but you can put a link to our website up too, to our clinic website. After living in mold 14 years, I moved into a 5-year-old new apartment with no mold. Now, when I go to my parents' house, I can smell mold at their house too. Yep. I have another family that I've been working with where the grandparents take care of the grandkids and the kids live in mold. And so the grandkids are in mold and the grandparents are going over there to take care of the kids. And when they go over there, they're, you know, it's damaging their health. It's such a, like I said, it's one of the most pervasive issues of our time. It'll be one of the big battles of our generation, is to get the mold word out. I've had a constellation of complaints for years, including fungal ball in the sinus, thyroid, mast cell irregularities, have trouble with docs and diagnosis. Is urine myco test somewhat definitive? It's definitive for exposure. It's not definitive as to where the exposure is coming from. So the key with the successful urine mycotoxin test is to make sure that you change your diet so that you're, for several weeks before submitting your sample, you're not eating mold contaminated, mycotoxin contaminated foods. And so that's an important part of that test. Most mold toxins have a very short half-life, circulatory half-life. So they're in and out. They can be in and out of you very quick. And so if you're eating them every day, you're going to see them coming out, and it's not necessarily a false positive. You're getting an accurate positive, but it just maybe not be your environment. It may be your food. And so when we test people, we always have them change their diet for several weeks beforehand. And that way we're not picking up on diet related mycotoxins. We're picking up on environmental related mycotoxins. And from there, you have to then reverse engineer where they spend most of their time, right? Is it at home? Is it at work? Or is it in a vehicle? And you have to rule those places out as potential sources of exposure. I had a case a few weeks ago. It was a woman, lived in the Dallas area. She, very interesting. She's really sick, struggling, multiple autoimmune diagnoses. Doctors weren't helping her. They were just really kind of throwing her off to other specialists because they didn't know what to do with her. And she found me. Anyway, we found mycotoxins in her, and of course they were in her house, but more than even in her house, she had a small problem in the house. It actually turned out to be her gym. Where she would work out, and she would go work out. She'd spend several hours a day in this gym, and she was being exposed. And we got her out of that gym, and she made a recovery. I mean, a few weeks being out of that gym, she started feeling better. And so anyway, she doesn't go to that gym anymore and is doing well. So it's not always even your house. Like That's why it's so important to stay objective with the process. It's why it's so important when you're thinking about mold and you suspect mold, the mold inspection and the right inspector become the second most important step. The first most important step is identifying whether or not you have an environmental mold exposure problem. And that can be done through testing. But that mold inspection becomes the next important step, because if they do it wrong, they're gonna send you down the wrong trail and possibly lead you in, or leave you into that home that's hurting you. I've had let's see here. I'm seeing an integrative medicine doctor at the end of the month. I know they do blood tests. Is there anything I should ask for additionally? I mean, lots of things. There's 4 things that you should ask if you're seeing any kind of functional integrative doc. There should be guaranteed, without fail, these 4 things should be measured. And this is my opinion. I'm sure that other doctors have different opinions, but this is my opinion. This is what has allowed me to treat thousands of cases of autoimmune disease successfully over the past several decades. Number 1, you have to measure for food sensitivity, period. Measure food. Number 2, you have to measure for microbial imbalance. And so that's different. There are different kinds of tests that can isolate and look at that. But as a category, you're looking at the microbiome, and you're also looking at the potential for microbes growing on or in or around other organs or systems in a person. So microbes. Number 3, you have to look at toxin exposure. Mold is a toxin, but other toxins, there's heavy metals are toxins, glyphosate's a toxin, other pesticides and herbicides, food dyes, preservatives, additives are all toxins. We look for these things because we want to make sure we guide that person away from them if they're problematic. And then number 4, you have to have your vitamin and mineral status, your nutritional status measured. And that means measuring your nutrients, but it also means measuring your ability to assimilate nutrients from the food that you eat. So measuring your gut and its functionality, measuring how well you digest, how well you make enzymes, how well your liver is producing bile. These are all things that become important to look at so that you have a broad scope context of the major triggers of autoimmunity and the major triggers of chronic inflammation. Food, chemicals, microbes, nutritional deficiencies, those 4 categories. If you haven't already, watch my definitive course on autoimmune disease. I've done several of them. They're a couple of hours long. And a lot of people bitch and moan about how, Dr. Osborne, can't you just summarize it quicker? I do every week. Food, chemicals, microbes, nutritional deficiencies. Get those things tested and get a plan. That's the simple version. But it isn't simple. It's complex. So that 2 hours of your time, if you watch that video, is very, very much worth it, because it'll give you a greater context when you go in to see your integrative practitioner, so that you can now have an intelligent conversation. See, part of the problem with doctors and patients is that doctors generally tend to have a authoritative demeanor where they're the dictator. What they say is the rule, right? And then they look at the patient like the serf. Well, what you say doesn't matter. What I say is important. We're going to do what I want to do. That's the wrong role. If you have a relationship like that with the doctor, that's the wrong role to have. The role really should look like this. And the way I approach it is, it's not that I'm the dictator. I am the experienced knowledge base of biochemistry and physiology that a person is seeking an opinion from. Keyword is opinion. Like, I have opinions. There's no doubt I'm very opinionated based on my experiences and successes and failures. And so that's what I try to impart to people. It's not, hey, you have to do this or go away. It's, these are the things that I think you should do, and these are the reasons why I think you should do them. And the reasons why I think this is X, Y, Z, etc. And that's based on conversations that we have. That's based on the medical history of the person. It's based on the family history of the person, and so many other variable factors that are part of a visit and part of the investigation itself. And from there, then the person has the freedom to make their choice. They can either choose to do what my opinion and recommendations are, or they can choose to do differently. And either way, as long as they're honest with me and how they're going about it, so that when I see them again in 3 months or 4 months or 5 months or whenever it might be, they're saying, hey, I did everything you asked me to do. So now I have context for what's their progress look like, and why is it good or why is it not good? And if they didn't do the things that I recommended, then I have the context for that as well. And so if I tested them for gluten sensitivity and they refuse to change their diet, when they come back in, I'm going to simply say, did you change your diet? And if they say no, I'm going to say, okay, Well, when you change your diet, we'll have better context for how you're going to respond. But right now you're still sick and you haven't done what I've asked you to do. And that's okay. No judgment. But until that happens, I'm not going to throw thousands of dollars in lab investigation or medical investigation at a person when they're not doing fundamental things first. So we always start by measuring fundamentals, and we always start with the understanding that it's a relationship, not a dictatorship. And if you have a relationship like that with your doctor, it's time to move on. Look, we got a revolution on our hands in medicine that they have. Again, this is not acute. I'm not referring to acute care, because I don't think medicine is bad or evil, and I don't think doctors are bad or evil. I think they've been influenced by pharma for far too long. I think that, the fox is in the hen house, so to speak, and these guys are doing their best with the tools that they have and the training that they have. But the training they have is pharmaceutical management of chronic inflammatory disease, and that sucks because it doesn't work. And it's obvious that it doesn't work because we're the sickest country in the world, and we spend more on drugs and surgery than everyone combined. So empirical data is all that matters. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what the study said. It only matters what the experience of the person was that was going through the care. And so when somebody comes to me and they get better because they changed their diet and got out of mold, I really don't give a shit what this study or that study said. If that person got better because of that good guidance that was objectively based on their own biochemistry, that is the only thing that matters. N equals 1. And research studies are highly biased, even double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled trials. It's not to say we shouldn't do them. It's not to say that we shouldn't read them and we shouldn't investigate them, but they're highly biased, extremely biased. As a matter of fact, it was Abram Hoffer that designed the double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled trial, and he was a psychiatrist, an orthomolecular psychiatrist that was treating people with schizophrenia and other mental disease with high doses of vitamin C and niacin. Very brilliant man. And he said that the research, it was never designed to become the gold standard of medicine, but it has been. It's been hijacked by the powers that be, even though its creator didn't intend for that to be the case. The same thing happened with DNA testing, with PCR testing. The doctor that invented that, when they were doing all the PCR nonsense testing during COVID, trying to tell people you have an infection off a PCR test, is bullshit. Excuse my language. I get fired up about this stuff. And anyway, things that are done wrong sometimes are done wrong by so many people that it becomes the standard of care. And that's where we're at. We have a standard of care that, in my opinion, is ass backwards. It's Alice in Wonderlandian in its effect. And so most people don't understand functional medicine because they've never been introduced to it. But almost everyone that gets introduced to it never goes back to medicine. It's because functional medicine has truth. It resonates. Truth resonates, right? And when doctors are looking for root cause instead of symptomatic suppression through enslavement to pharmaceuticals for the rest of your life, there's truth in that. There's slavery the other way. And it's not like physical slavery, labor slavery. It's a form of slavery. It's where I am now the doctor that gatekeeps your medication so that you can have a quality of life, but I'm not willing to spend any time with you or share any true meaningful things that you should be doing to improve the quality of your health. And that's just wrong. Okay, let's move on. Can mold be destroyed by frequencies? I don't know. It's not anything I have experience with. I know, like Dr. Rife, if you look at Rife's work where he was using frequencies to kill cancer cells, and there's definitely evidence that mold can contribute to cancer, and that in some cases cancers are actually molds, and many cancers have a mold or a microbiome. They have fungal DNA in them. So maybe there's some evidence and scientific rigor around that. I haven't read it. I haven't experienced it. It's not something I use clinically, but I would imagine that there's probably something there. Regarding air filters in the car, I just found out that they make a HEPA filter for the cabin air filters for most cars. I just been buying the cabin air filters that they recommend, not HEPA. HEPA's better. HEPA's going to pull more particulate out. So, my opinion, worth the extra bucks to get it. My bathroom ceiling extractor fan broke loose and unbeknownst to me was leaking moisture into my attic, caused a lot of damage and a lot of money to repair. Yeah, you need I know those ceiling extractors fans can be problematic. A lot of them are improperly installed and they just blow into the attic and cause moisture in the attic. So you should always check them. But you got to have some way to control the humidity in your bathroom. So if you're not using your fan, you should have a dehumidifier, a standalone dehumidifier in the bathroom. Definitely, if you've got a window, crack the window when you take a hot shower or bath. Let that moisture out. Does not having a gallbladder cause any problems with detoxing? You can still detox without a gallbladder. When you don't have a gallbladder, the biggest core problem is fat malabsorption long term. And so fat being vitamin A, D, E, and K, omega-3 fats, you need those nutrients to heal. You also need those nutrients to detox. So it's the malnutrition caused by the loss of a gallbladder over time that can impede your body's capacity for detox. So if you don't already, you ideally would take a bile acid supplement. We have a product called Lipogest that we recommend that people without gallbladders take to support the digestion of fat. When will you get the food sensitivity kit back on your site? The next couple of weeks, I believe, Bonnie. We just had a meeting about it this morning, and we're just waiting on some silly things that have to be done on the backside for logistics, but should be within the next couple of weeks. I have May-Turner syndrome and I refuse to be on blood thinner nor stented, and it has been 7 years, but I do take omega-3, cayenne pepper, and hawthorn. Do you think I'm making a mistake? It's hard to say, Diane. I don't know enough about you. I mean, ideally, you should be measuring your blood viscosity markers if your doctor's not already doing that. I mean, there's things like prothrombin time and prothrombin and fibrinogen and D-dimer and blood viscosity that all can be looked at in the context of what you're trying to accomplish to see if it's effective. And that's what any good doctor would be doing with you as you make that decision. Because look, blood thinners are fine. They work, but so do natural things. Natural things work really well. As a matter of fact, nattokinase at 10,000 FU, fibrinolytic units a day, there's ample evidence and research now in human trials that works equally well for reducing plaques and reducing problems. So natural things, just because they're there's the myth that just because it's natural, it must work less effective than a drug. And the reality is many natural things work better, if not just as good, if not better than many medications. It's just they're not patented. They're not patent medicine. So pharmaceutical companies can't own the market on them. The whole thing is it's a big damn mafia where if you can patent the medicine, nobody else can use it. You can make billions of dollars and lock that in, even if it isn't the best thing to do. But that's business. That's the way it works. But natural can work really well. But if you're asking me whether or not you're making a mistake, I don't know. You should be measuring those viscosity markers on a regular basis, working with somebody who understands this to determine whether or not you're making a mistake. Okay, scroll up just a little bit. Shout out to Skeptic. Thanks for the donation. Skeptic says, thank you very much, and I recommend your viewers watch your recent talk with Dr. Nathan. Yeah, if you missed my talk with Dr. Nathan, it was a great interview. He's a very smart guy and had a lot of really good pearls of wisdom, especially around detoxification and mold. So if you missed that, it was a couple of weeks ago. Go check that out. It's in our library feed, our video library feed. Okay, man, we really pushed it hard today, almost 2 hours. Hope it was helpful for you. I hope you learned something new today. That's our goal. Remember, our mission is to save 100 million lives. And in order to do that, we show up. We show up every week, helping you get the information that you need to empower yourself to overcome autoimmunity and chronic inflammation. If you're new to the show, if this was your first show, welcome. I hope you come back. If you want more, if you want to learn more and you want to get on our educational list, you can go over to glutenfreesociety.org. And you can sign up there. It's absolutely free. We won't spam you. We won't sell your email address or give it away to a bunch of scammers. We'll simply give you bunches of free information on nutrition, lifestyle, navigating chronic autoimmunity. That's our goal. Our mission is to help you. You can also text. You can also sign up via text. I think we have that. Mel, maybe you can put that up. If you sign up for text, we send out a lot of deals and stuff like that for the store that we don't email. So if you sign up for our texts, you kind of get back-end discounts and things of that nature. Those of you that are gluten sensitive that want to support us, that are looking for quality supplements, I highly recommend our products. I'm obviously biased there, but go to Gluten Free Society in the shop. This week we're selling Gluten Shield. It's on sale. Do we have a coupon code?
It is, I wrote it there for you. GS8.
Oh, missed it. Okay, code GS8, and you'll save $8 on Gluten Shield through Monday. And so if you travel a lot and you're worried about gluten cross-contamination and want a layer protection, or if you just want a good digestive enzyme that'll help you break your food down, Gluten Shield is where it's at. So we appreciate your support. That's how we keep the lights on. That's how we come back week after week. We don't advertise, and we don't put other businesses in front of you. So it's just us. So thanks for your support. We appreciate you. We'll be back on Tuesday for another episode of Dr. Osborne Zone, and next Thursday for another live Q&A. So hope you have a fantastic weekend, and we'll see you next week. Take care.